Hi and welcome to a special episode of It's a Mimic. This is episode 300, but as I'm going to explain in a moment here why, this episode ended up ballooning to be incredibly long. Over 6 hours worth of audio. So we're going to break it up over a bunch of different episodes that are going to last the majority of the week. The premise here is that I am sitting down with every single one of the hosts that we have across both the public channels and the Patreon and even some of the specials that we've done in the past. And the point is to talk with them about 5th edition, now that it's done, as well as moving into a new edition and how they feel about that. We're also going to take the opportunity to look back a little bit at their time on It's a Mimic and find out whether or not they're going to be moving forward with the podcast. And spoiler alert, there are a couple of people that will not be. So this is part 1, and the host we're kicking off with is me. I think it's only fair that I answer the questions before I make anyone else answer them. Yes, the questions will be the same for each host over the week, but I'm hoping that the different answers and different perspectives will provide some insights into how our panel of DMs comes from a wide variety of viewpoints. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump into it. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Adam. It's nice to see you. I feel like it's been forever.
It has been. For anyone listening, we have been on a hiatus. Everyone except the Lady Mimics has been on a hiatus for 11 weeks. Some of them up to, I think, 17 weeks.
Yeah.
But you guys have been rocking Undead and Drow and another project coming up that we're not going to spoil yet.
Of course not, because what if it doesn't happen?
I mean, nothing.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. I'm just kidding. We're so dedicated.
Yeah.
All right, so let's launch right into some questions, starting around your feelings and around the general D&D 5th edition. So now that it's over, how do you feel about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition as a game?
I think it is tabletop role-playing on easy mode.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that it's easy to learn and it's hard to die.
Yeah.
It is very player-friendly. It still looks dense, and of course, with the new books that are coming out, they're 400 plus pages each for the core rulebook. So, like, it's going to become a little bit denser with more options and more noodly rules and whatnot, which is fine. But compared to Call of Cthulhu, compared to L5R, I find that even Pathfinder and all of the other ones that I've explored, 5th edition is easy to understand. Character creation sucks if you're brand new.
Yes.
But once you're past that, the gameplay itself is easy to understand.
Even for veterans, I find the character development and like actual creation is unnecessarily complex for a game that is technically, in my mind, easy mode to build.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. Yeah.
It's just that, like, by the time you get into the spells and all that shit, but that's the nature of D&D. Like, you're not going to be able to cut anything out.
Yep.
But no, I like what 5th edition has done because it opened it up to everybody. We got so many new players. This is the biggest influx of players probably ever in an edition, short of maybe AD&D. But it's done great things for the hobby. It's also done some really shitty things to the hobby with AI art and all sorts of controversies and shit.
Oh, they tried some stuff. They certainly did.
Yeah. But no, overall, as a game, I consider this to be a great place to start. 5th edition is a good intro to role-playing games.
Yep, I agree. Well, that being said, what has been your favorite rule, mechanic, or design choice for 5th edition and why?
For simplicity's sake, advantage and disadvantage. That was not a thing in Dungeons and Dragons. It was all numeric modifiers. A +2 to this, a -10 for that, a +5 for this. If it's dark and windy, but you've got this kind of extra sight and you've got 2 feats that boost to this and you're behind cover, you were doing so much math. You bust out a calculator for it. Advantage and disadvantage cleared all that shit up, and it's part of the reason why I think it's so user-friendly.
Yeah.
So the bounded accuracy was great. The leaning into the action economy and kind of streamlining it was great, but advantage and disadvantage was the clear winner of 5th edition.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, what was your least favorite then?
I don't like how all the fucking combat maneuvers require a athletics versus athletics or acrobatics. It is the same mechanic for all the shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we should have had another... It would have been cool to have a rock, paper, scissors kind of situation, you know what I mean?
I can see that.
So, I don't have the specifics of that down. Like, I don't have the solution to it, but it annoys me. How does shoving work? Oh, gee, I wonder. Let me tell you. And I just regurgitate the same shit over and over again.
I always try and get away with doing acrobatics over athletics, depending on what character I'm playing.
I'm aware, you monk.
I'm like, what if I did a cartwheel instead?
Get up right now and do it in my living room, and then I will entertain the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, you know I used to be a cheerleader, right? Like I could do a cartwheel. Like,
Probably not in my living room.
no, you're not wrong. All right. Wizards of the Coast has gone through a lot of controversy in the last few years. What's one thing that sticks out to you the most, and how do you feel about how they handled it?
The Hadozi was an absolute clusterfuck. It is hard to believe that was accidental. Putting the monkey people in minstrel garb.
Oh my god.
Feels like such a deliberate. Whether or not it was, I cannot believe. Like it just does not sit with me that was an accident.
Knowing how production works in a small way.
Yeah.
There's no way in fuck that was an accident. Someone legitimately thought that was a good idea.
And managed to sneak it past probably 4 to 5 editors and double check and proofreaders and everything else. That went, yep.
Yeah. Or it was just one guy that didn't give a shit and was just like, yep, absolutely. And I say one guy because it was probably a man.
Yes. But with their already problematic fucking backstory and shit too, throwing that on there, it was wildly unnecessary. And they just scrubbed it. They did a quick apology and said, fuck, nope, sorry, and removed it. And never gave us anything to replace it. So, and that seems to be a lot of their method for dealing with the controversy is we will take away the bad, but we're not going to replace it with good. We won't just have a hole there.
Yeah, we're just, no. And I think that was the big thing that's now that we have D&D Beyond and the fact that everything is now archived online by Wizards of the Coast, it's almost like an easy, we'll just remove it from the website.
Yeah.
And it's like, great, but it's still in this book that you've handed me.
Yeah. Hold on, let me take a screenshot.
Let me just.
Yeah. I get so frustrated with how they handled a lot of their controversies, but I will say, especially the OGL shit, but I will say at least with the AI art, they seem to be doing it correctly.
Yeah.
And they did replace the art. They didn't just scrub it. They replaced it in the new D&D Beyond stuff. So at least that was a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I feel in production that was a timing thing and Kevin just fucked up, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Are you excited for the new updated rules?
No.
I'm tired, he says.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Am I excited about them? In theory, yes. Yeah. I am so excited to dig into them. But I am post-wedding, pre-Christmas at the time of this recording, and I'm fucking exhausted, and I am right now building... you walked in today, and I'm me building a 5.5, whatever we're going to call it, character.
Yeah.
And which is exciting at surface level, but I also have 4 tabs open to try to figure out what the differences are, and the minutia versus 5th edition.
I feel like I just figured out regular 5th edition.
Well, okay, to be fair, we play such long-ass campaigns that how often do you roll up a new character?
Yeah, well, it's so funny. Like, one of my good friends, he just started to roll up a character for a game that he's playing with his friends. And so he gave me a call and we had a Zoom chat he's like, can you help me build this character? I'm like, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not any better at this than you would probably be. Because I don't do this often with how much I play my characters. But anyways, so yeah, I can't even imagine what it's going to be like. I haven't even tried it yet.
I gotta say, from what I've seen, I like the layout of the books. They're going to be easier to navigate. I like...
The character sheet looks really dope.
Yeah.
The way it's broken down.
Yeah, and that they got the skills in with the ability scores and everything. It's... I do think that it is going to, in the long run, be more versatile. I hope it's more versatile. We'll see. I'm waiting on the monster manual to tell. Yeah. Right, because all the player characters get a whole bunch of new fancy cool shit. Everyone power scaled to different degrees. The ranger still sucks, I think. But like everything else seems to have power scale. But if the monsters don't, fuck, it's already on easy mode. Yeah. I'm going to have to throw 600 goblins at you to scratch someone, right? Yeah. Like I'm waiting to see. Yeah. Fingers crossed. So.
We'll see.
Yeah.
What's one thing you hope that they do change?
I will say the monsters. Yeah. There needs to be more variety. A lot of the monsters we have in 5th edition are just hit points and AC. Right? Yeah. Like
even the amount of times we've reviewed stat blocks, like they get repetitive after a while. Yeah.
Especially when you realize that the claw, the bite, the sword, it's all a D8 or a D6 plus 1 to 3.
Whatever piercing damage you're gonna take.
Like there's very little fucking else there. Like you gotta go into some of the weirder books to get the fun stuff. So yeah. I hope the baseline we have gnolls that when a character gets to 50% health, the gnolls go into a frenzy and they get an extra attack, right? Or like, there should just be more interesting things. So every monster's a little bit different.
Yeah, to make combat less monotonous and repetitive.
Yeah.
I can see that. Dope. At what point do you think you'll transition to the new rule set?
For the podcast, within the next 6 months.
You're welcome.
For the, I'm playing in a mini campaign right now where Sean is DMing, and that's going to kick off here in like 4 days. Mm-hmm. So I will be transitioning to that play, but I don't know all the rules. Mm-hmm. I'm going to rely on him for that. But in our campaign, when we have the appropriate subclasses,
yeah,
because that's the thing that we can't transition over, right? Like, we have a Celestial Warlock. That's great, but I can't remember what Charlie is right now. We don't have an Ascended Dragon Monk in the new book, right?
No.
So you can't port your character.
I am very special.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
I don't even remember what Charlie is, because I feel like Charlie is cross-classed 3 times.
Oh, he's a Sorcerer, Bard, Warlock.
Yeah. Oh, I have a level of Warlock, too.
Everybody has a level of Warlock. I managed to do that to all of you, and that's fantastic.
Yeah. You know what? That's a win for you.
Yeah.
How dare you use my weakness power. Awesome. So let's move on to talking about the podcast as a whole and how that was for you. Do you remember your first episode and what it was like? Yours would have been like episode 1.
Well, I was on episode -6.
-100.
Yeah, because Dan and I sat down and recorded 6 episodes of something that will never see the light of day before we added Terry to it. So, and it sucked. And he still has the recordings on his computer, but we have buried them. Mm-hmm. They will never hear the like real airwaves ever. So, I remember the first episode, me being absolutely brash and overconfident, saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And the other guy's looking at me like, I guess we'll trust the process. And it was fucking sloppy for a good solid 20 episodes. I hate the early days of It's a Mimic. They're hard for me to go back and listen to. I never had to edit them. That was all Dan editing back then. Yeah. So I recorded them. I listened to the first 3 and said, I'm never going to listen to any episode ever again. Yeah. And then when I took over editing, I have had to listen to everything since.
Yeah, right? You're welcome.
So, no, I remember going, what are we even doing and how are we doing this? We had big pipe dreams that we're going to make $1,000 a month on this thing off of ads and stuff, and that never materialized. Like, it has been a rocky road, but like way back at the beginning, I look back at it and I think we were so ambitious that we had no idea what we were talking about. Yeah. So, I mean, in the realm of podcasting, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we did a lot of learning about podcasting and learning about D&D and learning about each other as well. Because if you go back and listen, I'm sure that you'll be able to hear the splices where suddenly someone was getting worked up and it's suddenly calm again because we pulled out a 4-minute screaming match between Dan and Terry, which every one of us stormed out of the room at one point in the first 15 episodes.
That's funny.
And no listener will ever be able to, you might be able to find out where, but you'll never hear the original screaming fits. But like, it took a while for us to find a groove. Yeah, no, for sure. What's one of your favorite memories about the experience of doing the podcast? Who wrote these fucking questions? Right? We had a listener bake us a cake. Oh, I remember that. Like early days. Yeah, like after about the first year. I wasn't around for the cake consumption. No, but you were on the podcast at that point. But I remember hearing about the cake. Yeah. And seeing the photo of the cake. And there was so much fondant and icing on it. It was so rich. It was like the 3 of us sat there and ate it, and then we just let Dan's kids loose on it afterwards because we just could not stomach it. I could feel my pancreas screaming. But it was so tasty. It was so rich. And they like took pictures of it when they delivered it. We met them at a Starbucks. They took pictures with us as if we were celebrities, and we're just like, we're just dudes. Like each of us is out $12 a month right now to host this dinky little podcast, and like, but it was a lot of fun, and I've lost touch with them since. I've reached out a couple of times, and I just don't think they're on social media anymore. But I hope they're doing well. Crystal, if you're still listening, thank you for the cake. It has made an impact. It goes down in history as one of our finest memories of being on the podcast. Absolutely. Yeah. I want you to know that we actually ordered It's a Mimic shirts so that we had some sort of branding, and that's why we had the gray, green, and pink shirts for the t-shirts there, because we needed to wear something to go meet fans, listeners. So Anyway, yeah.
What a sweet uniform. Do those still exist somewhere?
You can order them online if anyone ever wants to go to the store.
Oh
Nobody
my
ever does,
God.
and that's perfectly fine, and they're better left.
I feel like I just need to order one for nostalgia purposes. I have one of our mugs for sure. I don't know what I ordered a couple of other things, but I don't have a shirt.
I got a bunch of stickers and the mouse pad and a mug. I didn't buy my own mug. Somebody else bought the mug for me. They're like, you don't have your own mug? Here you go. And I had a shirt, and then it like shrunk a little bit in the wash, and it just wouldn't fit me anymore. If you're going to order a shirt, buy big.
Noted.
Yeah, but, and then Mieke took scissors to it, and now it's like a crop top that she wears to like clean around the house. Like,
cute.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. What has been the most challenging or upsetting part of your history with It's a Mimic? You could say Dan's leaving. Like,
Dan's leaving was a big, that shook me to my core.
yeah.
Editing for the Deep Dark Radiance, Dan and I nearly came to fists over that.
Yeah.
I remember standing in his garage at 2:30 in the morning, going home to edit. I called in sick to work because I needed to edit, and he and I were screaming at each other like neighbors' lights were coming on. It was not good. The sheer amount of editing, scheduling fucking sucks. I'm now scheduling 16 people for things. That's a full-time job.
Yeah, man.
And everybody's got lives, and no one's getting paid for this. I'm not getting paid for this.
Yeah.
So it's a passion project, and like, some days I wish I could say, hey, do this or you're fired.
You know, right? It's like, what do you mean you're gonna fire me? Do I get a severance? What's my severance package?
I will be back groveling in 10 minutes.
Who has been your favorite host to record with?
That answer changes based on the era.
Truth. I can agree with that.
Like, Dan and I, through COVID, he saved my life
Yeah.
through the pandemic, because he was in my bubble, and Dave was in my bubble too, but Dan was the only one that I was seeing regularly to record with.
Yep.
He saved my life for that. My favorite hosts to listen to are the Undead episodes, hand down. Like, I don't know if anyone's noticed this, I am the only editor on the Undead episodes. I have outsourced other episodes from every other series to other people.
Yeah.
But I loathe the idea of giving up the Undead episodes. So they were just so fucking chaotic. So
We had a good time.
yeah, it was great. But Kyle has been a lot of fun in the last couple of years. Like,
Yeah.
he attacks things, he truly listens, and he analyzes, and he attacks things from a point of view that I don't.
Yeah.
Right? And so,
He's a good active listener, I will say that.
yeah, he's really good to bounce shit off of on mic. So probably today, Kyle, it's a lot of fun working with new people. I have not been on a whole lot of episodes with Elwin or Steve, right? Or Sean. I've only done a couple of Legend Lords with.
Yeah.
It's neat to have new voices as well.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you and Dan are like the longest running hosts besides myself at this point. And I never worry about you guys showing up to do episodes. I worry a little bit about some of the others.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I will cancel.
No, but you will reschedule. The others will say, sorry, Adam.
I think it's because I am a development director in real life
Yeah.
that I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I hear ya. In your opinion, what is the episode that you are the proudest of being a part of?
While I wasn't directly on it, I am proudest of the one about the ladies and women and girls playing tabletop role-playing games.
Yep.
I am so glad that we had a space for that conversation. Drow episode 0 got so much fucking hate in the inbox, and I nearly drowned in it for a while. I told Mieke I'm this close to turning off the fucking comments because I can't handle it. It wore me down. And then we got so many positive reviews like within 48 hours after that.
Good.
But at no point did I waver on should I pull the episode down. Like, it's something I thought was really important to have that conversation.
Yep.
And I think the White Dragons episode, the first White Dragons episode, way back, it was like episode 17 or something, was fucking great. We did one about ocean travel where we pulled Robert in. Like, that one was a fucking phenomenal episode.
Yeah.
All of the stuff with the patrons are so much fun to record.
Those are a lot of fun
yeah.
episodes. Yeah. I've only done like
Just
one.
the one, yeah, with Scott. but no, all of them are great. So, like, those ones have been particularly fantastic.
Yeah.
Next on the docket is Sean, who did the Star Trek mailbag and a few Legend Lore episodes on the Patreon.
Hi,
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am loving life.
Functioning.
Yeah. Asking the same 12 questions repeatedly. So, let's talk about 5th edition for a second.
Sure.
Now that it's done. How do you feel about Dungeons & Dragons, specifically 5th edition, as a tabletop role-playing game. Where does it sit in the realm of TTRPGs for you?
Well, it was better than 3.5. It was better than Pathfinder. And I've got very fond memories of both. I think it simplified a lot of rules. I think that it did a lot of things right when it came to compatibility in the books, give or take a little bit. It was a damn sight better than a lot of the compatibility with the 3.5 material. So, and it got more adoption in the 4th edition. So, win-win-win.
Did you like it more than 4th?
I didn't give 4th a big enough shake to be able to say one way or the other.
Okay, that's fair. Has there been a favorite rule, mechanic, or design choice in 5th edition that sticks out to you as being this is the thing they did right?
Anything that refers to advantage and disadvantage, I think is
That was an inspired piece of game design?
yeah, that was really well done, and I think that may end up being the defining feature of 5th edition in my mind.
Yeah, it took us away from the plus and minuses on the D20 system we had before.
Yeah.
So what's been your least favorite rule, mechanic, or design choice of 5th edition?
Least favorite. The action economy is still a little bit weird. I think that it probably could be mangled a little bit. On top of that, the crafting system.
Yeah, what crafting system?
That's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're aware of the controversies that Wizards of the Coast has gone through over the past few years and stuff?
Painfully.
Is there one thing that sticks out to you the most, and how do you feel about how it's handled?
I have been pretty vocal about a lot of the things that Wizards have done in the past. I canceled my D&D Beyond subscription for an extended period of time after being, I was one of the first people to get on that thing when it first came out, right? But
What made you quit? Was it the OGL?
it was the OGL thing that was a problem for me.
Yeah.
The OGL was a problem for me. That said, it's still what people want to play.
Yep.
And when people are thinking D&D these days, they're still thinking 5th edition. So I can either play or not necessarily play it.
So we're hoping that it's going to transition into 5.5 or
Sure.
OneD&D, whatever they want to call it, right? But and it won't be them focused on 5th edition only. Are you excited for the new rules?
They've been, with the exception of character creation, they really do feel a lot like similar rules with a couple of minor tweaks, which lends itself to being 5.5. I will be more excited. I am equally as excited for 5.5 as I was about 5e. I hope that the darker days of the company are behind us.
Don't we all?
Right?
Yeah. All right. Is there anything that you hope that they change besides crafting rules?
Yeah, giving us crafting rules would be nice. No, anything else is really, at the end of the day, it's DM discretion, right?
Yeah.
I don't have anything in particular that jumps out at me that needs to be fixed outside of, hey, give us something with crafting.
Sure. Okay. And I guess my final question for you about 5th edition is, at what point do you figure you're going to transition into the new rule set?
Already have.
Cool. How do you like it so far?
So far, so good. The character design portion of it, the character creation portion of it is refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit different. It's not as clinical and math heavy as it has been even since 3.5.
Yeah.
I like that they're coming at it from everybody thinks about their class first anyways. So pick your class.
Yeah.
And go from there.
It seems to be designed with players in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's also what scares me about it. It's not designed with DMs in mind, although I am pretty happy with the DMG so far. But let's talk for a moment about It's a Mimic in podcasting.
Sure.
Okay? Because we're coming to the end of an era. As we hit this episode 300, we are going to be changing a lot of things. So, just as a retrospective, a looking back, do you remember your first episode that you and I recorded?
You know, I don't.
I think it was Spire.
It may have been Spire.
I think it was Spire, but don't quote me on that. There might have been something else beforehand. There might have been a rant about something that went up on the Patreon, but it might have been Spire.
We sat down to try and record something at one point and ended up just spending the entire 2-hour period talking about...
Storytelling.
It was storytelling, and it was stories that are no longer meant for us.
Yeah.
But still deserve to be told.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was that? How was that sitting down? Because you and I talked about podcasting for years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went off and did it. And then you're like, what the fuck?
Hey.
And then like 4 years or 5, whatever into it, I'm like, oh yeah, right. You want to come do this?
Well, in fairness, the distance doesn't necessarily help. But it is what it is.
What's one of your favorite memories about the experience of podcasting? It's funny, most people will know your voice if they're patrons, right? Not a whole lot of people know you on the public channels.
Yeah.
Except for, I think, the Call of Cthulhu episodes. The Legend Lore where we sat down and broke them all down.
Oh, yeah, with the investigators.
Yeah, fuck right off.
Yeah.
But was there a highlight for you so far?
The investigator bit, I'm actually particularly proud of.
Is there a low point? What's been the worst or most awkward or most challenging part?
Oh God, I can't listen to my voice yet. That's one
you're
thing.
still there, huh?
I'm still there. But also, I get to a point, because, spoiler alert, we usually record these quite late in the evening, and I start to get to a point where my brain turns into a pumpkin.
Yes.
And then I kind of stop responding, and that's bad of me.
Yes. You do like to sit back and listen, especially if I'm in full rant mode.
Yes,
which I often am. In your opinion, what is the episode that you are the proudest of being a part of?
This one.
This one?
Yeah.
Well, it's going to, spoiler alert, this is the transition period where you're jumping on full time into It's a Mimic as one of the regular parts of the cast. So you're jumping on, you're joining. Is there anything you're excited about?
I'm excited to continue the what were we calling that?
It gets to a certain point of the night where your brain just becomes a pumpkin.
And it's just gone.
Yeah.
It's just gone. I'm really interested in continuing to do the system reviews. I know we've got a lot of systems between you and I that we would love to talk about and love to sink our teeth into. I'm really excited about that and really excited to see what kind of trouble we can get into.
I am also really excited to get you across the table from people besides me.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good.
And not just the old friends like Dave and Dan, right?
Yeah.
But some new voices and new friends as well, so you guys can bounce off each other.
It'll be good.
I'm excited about it.
I am too.
Let's move into my conversation now with Terry. Hey Terry, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. You're in the lowest chair. I think it just sank. You're half my height. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, there we go. I'm back. I'm out of practice. I have no idea what I'm doing.
It has been how long since you've sat here? 6 months?
It can't have been 6 months.
July was, maybe it was August. 5 months?
Maybe 5 months.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Some of us made the dumb decision to go get married, so,
Yeah, congratulations again.
Thank you. I'm hoping that this is going to be relatively quick. I only have a handful of questions.
Sure.
But the first one is, now that it's over, how do you feel about D&D 5th edition as a game?
Now that it's over, how do I feel? I love 5th edition. 5th edition was my introduction to D&D. I found that it was... Yeah, you got a little bit to learn up front, and everybody who I've introduced to D&D, which has been a few people now, has, confessed that once you get through that initial load of work, then you've got it forever. And then you have the idea of RPGs and the idea of D&D forever, and everything else is just a little bit of a tune-up from there. So I've got a lot of love for 5th edition. It brought me a lot of friends. It brought me a lot of... I don't know how many hours of happiness, so it's got a special place in my heart.
So what's been your favorite rule, mechanic, or design choice in 5th edition?
Rule, mechanic, or design choice? My favorite... Or design choice... Oh, God. Favorite rule? Favorite rule or mechanic? Favorite rule is... I'm going to say... Okay, you know what I'm going to say, actually, which is... It's not hard, fast rule. I felt like the rule of cool was much more accepted in 5th edition. When I hear stories of previous editions, and it would like 3.5, for example, and there's all these books, and there's a mechanic for everything, and they're very hard and fast and everything. 5th edition, where everything was much more simplified, allowed us more flexibility to be like, okay, we can make this work here. Rule of cool states that this is better. And so I really... The design choice then is the flexibility the 5th edition allowed.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. Some of the others, you're the last one that we're recording with, although you're not going to be the last one we release. But some of the others have also said essentially that as well.
Right.
You can do anything in 5th ed as long as it makes some amount of sense. Right. So, what's been your least favorite mechanic, rule, or design choice?
My least favorite mechanic that comes to mind would be how long you can hold your breath for by the rules. It's fucking ridiculous.
The fucking swim mechanics.
I never played it as com modifier as minutes. I always played it as rounds.
It just feels more dangerous, more fun.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Wizards of the Coast has gone through a lot of controversy in the last few years. Is there one that sticks out for you, and how do you feel about how they handled it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't even keep up with all of the controversy.
Sorry, controversy.
I don't even keep up with all of the controversy. Because, well, Adam, you know what I don't like too many voices and negativity. I have to run away from it. I can't handle it. And
You'll correct my pronunciation.
Yeah. And I felt that happening again when I was getting sucked into all that, and there's too many opinions and voices, because I understood what Wizards of the Coast were trying to do from a business perspective, but I felt like they really lost sight of their original audience in trying to cater to the masses and spread their brand. I think the biggest one that comes to mind is the gaming license issue.
Yeah.
Because that was really where I started to pay attention, and the core audience, the earlier players were really starting to turn their back there. But the newer players, especially the brand new players, they didn't care about that, and the brand was spread very well. Wizards of the Coast, when they're talking with their boffins and their business people, probably made a very good decision with some of these things that they did, but they've sacrificed their relationship with their core audience, I feel. So the gaming license was a big one.
Fortunately, they did roll it back, but they rolled it back, quote unquote, for now. So we'll see what that means in the future.
Yeah, we'll see.
Speaking of the future, are you excited for the new updated rules?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, no, because I don't like change, and these rules I'm okay with. And now we got, you know what it's like.
Yeah.
How many times have you done this now? You got to go buy all the new books again, or just update your rule set. So I'm not excited for that sense, and I'm also not that excited because I haven't taken a deep dive into them yet. But I haven't talked to anybody yet who's excited about it. They're like begrudgingly just going along with it. Okay, I will learn this, but nobody seems particularly enthusiastic.
I've got a lot of really positive things to say about the new rule sets from what I've gone through. That's not what this episode is, but you have now met someone who is excited for the new stuff.
Okay, good. And that surprises me because you are, I wouldn't want to say a purist, but you know what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah.
So
I have a lot of complaints about how easy it is for players to just... It's impossible to kill them. They can be the dumbest players in the world tactically, but by level 8, it's whatever. From what we've seen of the Monster Manual, which has not been released at this point, what we've seen, they're doing things to change that. They're adding some new fun abilities for the DM to play with, but they're also adding stuff like Bastions, which is home base and headquarters mechanics for players.
Ooh.
Right? Every one of the players has been designed, all the characters and the subclasses. We had 48 subclasses right out the gate, so 4 each, and no artificer. I'm doing better.
Right. Okay.
And all of them seem to have been powered up. There's more things you can do in your turn. It's more interesting. The lore is a little bit deeper. So I am pretty excited about it. And at no point has it ever been easier to learn how to play D&D than with the new books.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear.
So I have some positive things to say. Okay. We'll see how it all fleshes out in the next 3 years.
Let's see.
But here we are. So, what's one thing that you would hope that they do change, though?
Oh, the combat rounds need to be faster. Combat is supposed to be the most, we'll say, thrilling part of the game. The other pillars are still enjoyable for different reasons, but that's supposed to be your heart's racing, let's get going. And when the combat is so slow, it's underwhelming. If it's taking 5 minutes per turn, so 25 to 30 minutes a round, people are not excited for that long. We've got 2 hour combat, so I hope combat can be more efficient.
I think as everybody is able to do more damage, which seems to be like both sides are hitting harder now, it should be a little bit more fun and clearer answers should be available. So,
okay.
At what point do you think you're going to transition to the new rule set?
Oh, I'll just flipping change because everyone else is, because it's, I was talking to you, it was a different topic where we talk about like what success is. For me, success is just making it as easy on myself as it can be.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? Am I going to win if I have this fight? Probably not. So,
as soon as the rest of your table wants to swap?
So I'll just go with it.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll wrap this campaign up right now.
How far through are you?
We're almost there.
Yeah.
We're almost there. Tiamat's almost around the corner. And I want that massive Tiamat model, but it would not be a sensible choice. 6 months ago, I was like, in 6 months, I'll buy that model.
Sure, yeah.
Then it was getting close, and I'm like, Terry, you can't be dropping $500 on that Canadian as well. So.
All right, so let's look at It's a Mimic for a moment, because we are doing this transition, so let's look back at, well, where we've come from so far.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first episode that you were on, or what it was like?
I don't remember, I not in detail, but I do remember the earlier days.
Yeah.
You know how they say you never remember what people said to you, but you remember how they make them feel?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I
Yeah.
remember the sentiment. I remember what it was like. I remember,
Were you nervous? Like, was it jittery, or were you excited? What was
No, I think the problem was way back then was that I was not nervous. I was not nervous, and it was too much like I'm just talking to my friends in this room and I'm just shooting shit, and you can say whatever you like or whatever, and then you forgetting that a podcast is things go out there, it goes in the world, and I was quite surprised at how much of an audience we built up relatively soon.
Yeah. And then people were quoting shit back to us that we went, oh God.
Oh
we said
my
that?
God.
Yeah.
That isn't that the worst?
Yeah.
You're like, that I don't remember saying that, but that definitely sounds like something I would say, and I believe that I did. And so no, I was not too nervous at first, but then because I was not nervous initially, I got very nervous later on. And I used to say to you all the time, like I would come in on the episodes and I'm like, man, I still get nervous when I got to DM these episodes. And I remember you being like, still? Yeah. Still.
Do you have a favorite memory or experience from doing the podcast? One thing that sticks out?
Memory or experience? I always enjoyed the actual plays that we did. And I know we've talked about ways in which we can make those better and adjust the approach to it. And we've learned lessons along the way. But at the time, we're just playing D&D with our friends, and it's just ridiculous.
And we were leaning into the chaos.
And just leaning into the chaos, which is perfect for me to blow off some steam a little bit.
Right.
I'm such an instigator player. That,
You don't say.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's just a license to instigate. So.
Has there been something that was the most challenging or upsetting part of your history with It's a Mimic? And don't hold back.
Challenging, I think years gone by, the challenge was as we were trying to build the legitimacy of the podcast at the time of great uncertainty for a lot of us, and so we had a lot of outside influences that were causing a lot of chaos, and so it was trying to come in here and figure out what it was that we were trying to build, and this is working, this is not working, making these changes, at the same time as a lot of other things are chaotic. And
like going through the damn pandemic and the COVID episodes.
Pandemic and flipping, layoffs, relationships, all of that work stuff. Well, I said love. All of that stuff that was happening. There's family things.
And then you got to show up and be on.
And then you got to show up and be on. And these people that are listening, they don't know. Maybe some of them would care, but they don't. That's not why they're tuning in. And I felt a lot of personal growth over the years that we've been doing this. And as I look back, really this podcast has helped me a lot to recognize milestones in my life of how things have changed over the years. So I forget what the question was, but that's my answer.
Would you dread going back and listening to the early episodes?
Oh, 100%. I won't.
Yeah. Okay.
I won't.
Fair enough.
And they don't exist. And so, but it actually makes me very excited about how we move forwards now.
Yeah.
Because now I'm much more confident in what we have and what we can do and really what it's become. But does anybody want to listen to the first or view the first iteration of any art that they've done?
Yo, I hear you 100%, but it is weird for me to see the people that will clearly search shit on Google.
Please
will
don't.
pop up on YouTube and they will listen to, I don't know, Deep Dragons or something, right? And then go, oh, I like this. Let's go back to the beginning and listen all the way through. And so on YouTube specifically, but on all of the platforms, the old stuff gets a lot of weird little ticks once in a while. Someone listened to this, but they did it in 4 sittings. So, like, this one episode got 4 listens by whatever metric that, Podbean is using. And I'm like, oh, fuck, that doesn't make me feel great.
Oh, God, that's coming back.
Sean right now is going through and listening to all the backlog, and he's on episode 17. And I'm like, please skip to 150.
Yeah.
Just get
It's
past
just,
that.
I know. But, that's all part of it. The first step of being halfway decent at something is sucking at something. Worse of those effects. So, I get it. Chaos, dude. But
do you have a favorite host that you've worked with? And you can't say me because that's self-serving if I ask it. So,
so apart from you, a favorite host that I've worked with?
Yeah.
Megan is always very well prepared, which is good, or certainly puts that across. So she's easy to work with.
Yeah.
Pepperina is very well prepared as well, so she's easy to work with.
Who would you say you have the best rapport with for bouncing shit off of back and forth?
I do pretty good with Pepperina.
You guys knock dragons out of the park for like 200 episodes.
Thank you. Yeah, we get each other's humor, and we can, it's easy to work with. Dave, I really enjoyed working with because I actually enjoy my conversations with Dave, and we do like some of the same things where we'll be happy to sit and talk in detail about it, which might bore the piss out of everybody else. Nobody wants to know about tire and pit stop strategy in Formula One as much as I will talk to Dave about that. So, like,
you'd be surprised. Like, there are some weird niche things where every once in a while I will get a comment about something very specific, not D&D related, that someone mentions. And Dave will say, "Oh yeah, I own this gun," and then suddenly it'll be, you can get this stock for it if you want. And I'm like, sure, man. Thanks for the email. Like, I didn't know that, but I don't know if Dave does. I'll forward it to him. And
Dave does know.
Yeah, and he reads it and goes, yeah, and then never responds. But like, some people care. You'd be surprised if people care about it. So, in your opinion, what is the one episode that you are the most proud of being on? Or to phrase it another way, if you had to show someone one episode that you're on and you're like, this is a good one, this is the one you should listen to.
Oh God.
Is there one that stands out?
There isn't a single one, but I will say the Dragon series that I did with Pepperina and the other hosts that were rotating through was very fun for me, because that's the time, that's the excuse to talk about the thing that you all talk about all day, and nobody in the world really, apart from the people who listen to the episodes and us, are willing to talk about dragons in such detail, and you kind of forget that these creatures don't exist.
Yeah.
And I know so much about them. No, I will concede not as much as Pepperina, she's a true enthusiast, but enough to have a conversation with her where it's like, you would bore anybody else to death if they weren't that interested. But she'll happily talk about dragons with me all day, so I would say the dragon episodes were my favorite.
It's funny. I've got to highlight my two favorite highlights off the dragon episodes because I was either on them or edited them. On every dragon episode I had my hands on. So White Dragons at the very beginning with me, you, and Dan, and like the weird tactics we came up for with White Dragons stands out as probably the pinnacle of our early days.
Okay.
That one is really my favorite one. Blue Dragons is another one. You and Dan got in nearly a screaming match about what good actually means.
Oh, God.
And how selfish dragons will be.
That's an example of things where I would go look back at myself and say, Terry, you don't need to have this fight, and it's also not going to be important later.
But it was compelling as shit for me to listen to. But my other favorite one was Solar Dragons and Lunar Dragons, because you and Peps were just fucking done. You were so mad at these fucking dragons. And it was very clear by the end of the episode, you're like, fuck them, I don't care, let's move on. So, made me laugh.
It was Blue Dragons that Silver Dragons.
Silver Dragons was, what is good.
Silver Dragons. Here's something you might not expect. I actually don't mind Silver Dragons anymore. I've learned to use them in a way that I quite enjoy them. So
that does surprise me, actually.
I'm just letting go of hate.
All right.
I enjoy Silver Dragons. I drink pumpkin spice lattes now.
Whoa! Whoa!
I mean, not now. It's January. But...
Don't bring that fucking evil into my life, Terry.
Well, from JJB, not from Starbucks.
Okay, all right.
The Americans might not know JJB, but we do in Vancouver. So.
Well, half points then. So we're heading into a huge transition period for the next few months.
Okay.
Well, we revamp everything, and it's a good jumping on point for a lot of people. And we have Elwyn joining the main podcast. Sean and Steve are jumping in. Charlie's getting more involved on the Patreon side of things. So we got a lot of people coming, but there are also some people that are jumping off to go live their lives. Are you planning on moving forward, or are you going to announce your retirement?
Am I going to announce my retirement from It's a Mimic?
Yeah.
No, I'm not announcing I'm not fucking leaving! No, this is my time to... this is not... I don't do this so often that it's a chore for me. I don't lose sleep anymore about trying to balance this at the same time as getting back from work and all of these other responsibilities, and my fucking dog has been left alone for so long. It's not that much of a stress for me anymore. You and I have talked about like a cadence for me. I'm happy with that. It works for me, and now this has become something which which is enjoyable for me, where it's like, and somebody had to remind me of this was a long time ago actually, but that, hey, this is what you enjoy doing. Go and be with your friends. Don't think of it as, oh my God, I didn't do this, I needed to do this, but something to look forward to.
Yeah.
And it is. I'm glad to be back in the room here, and I'm excited for it. I'll be in a couple of times a month.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to jump over to the next host because we've got a lot of opinions on this episode, so. Finally, let's have a long overdue chat with Jeff.
Hi, Jeff. How you doing?
Hey, Adam.
I want to thank you for sitting down with me today because I know it's been like, a year and a half since we've sat down to do this. But I've got a handful of questions that I've been given to everybody else so far, and you have been such a part of the podcast in the past. I had to drag you back for one more round.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about 5th edition for a moment, because I know you have opinions.
Do I?
Now that it's over, how do you feel about D&D 5th edition as a game?
I loved it. I definitely enjoyed all the time that I spent drowning in it. I still love it as an addition, even though I haven't played it in about a year and a half now. And I think it was the right addition at the right time for a lot of people.
Yes. Are you playing anything right now?
Not at the moment. Between like bad internet at home and like a transient state where I kind of split my time between two places, I don't have the time or the ability to dedicate to it right now, although it is starting to itch at me and I want to get back into it when I can.
Do you know what system that you're looking to jump back into?
I think the next thing I want to do is going to be some science fiction horror. So I'll probably use Mothership or something like that for like a short, maybe like a 10-session sci-fi horror, isolation horror arc. But that's probably the next thing I'll do.
I've heard very, very good things about the Alien tabletop role-playing game.
Say that again?
I said I've heard some really good things about the Alien tabletop role-playing game.
I'll check that out for sure.
Yeah. So I think, and I know the starter set is like all-inclusive, special dice and the whole damn thing. So it might be worth checking out for you. So
yeah, definitely.
When it comes to 5th edition, was there a favorite rule or mechanic or design choice for 5th ed?
For me, I didn't drill down too specific for this. I just kind of went a little bit bigger umbrella. And though I love all of the classes and hope to be able to play all of them within this edition before it was done, overall, I have enjoyed the Paladin class the most as like the single set of rules or mechanics that I enjoyed. The overall balance of it, the way it works, the choices it forces players to make between available spell slots and uses of Divine Smite has always been fun and forces me as a player to choose between burning an action to revive a downed ally or possibly just killing the enemy right now with a well-placed smite. I loved being put in that position. I had a lot of fun with the class and the way it was built and the way it had the potential to drive up stakes in a lot of situations for me as a player. So I'd say overall, the class Paladin has been my favorite set of mechanics.
I think the Paladin and the Rogue probably have the most options for that kind of forced decision-making, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
What's been your least favorite rule or mechanic or design choice for 5th ed?
As much as the potential for it to be great is there, the way it's written leaves it far too open to abuse from DMs and players alike to fail to maximize its fun and potential power in practice, and that is the Wild Magic Sorcerer. Tides of Chaos is a critic of the subclass, and I feel that the writing needed to be clearer on how best to use and abuse it, as well as things like the Surge table could have been better.
I agree
It is a
with you 100%.
ton of fun, and I think the way they constructed it made it way too difficult for DMs and players to know how to use it for maximum fun.
The fact that it required a partnership between the Dungeon Master and the player in a way that no other subclass did made it a particular challenge, right?
Yeah, and if you have any feeling at all of antagonism from the DM as someone who doesn't want to deal with Tides of Chaos, with how that subclass works, it's not going to be fun. You're not going to get to use the abilities. And it's potentially annoying to everyone else at the table in a way that's not fun, because it's like the concept was just not executed as well as it could have been.
Yeah, we ended up getting the Wild Magic Barbarian later, and it was a far better thought subclass as far as integration with the rest of the table. So speaking of things that are kind of fucky, and I'm going to sit down and shut up and let you go off here. Wizards of the Coast has gone through a lot of controversy in the last 2 years. What's the one thing that sticks out to you the most, and how do you feel about how it was handled?
I could go on about this for an hour, and you know that, and I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Where to even start? The biggest thing for me has been the obvious and blatant desire by Wizards of the Coast to drain their cash cow of every red cent they possibly could, without any regard whatsoever for what got D&D to where it is, why 5e launched the brand to the stratosphere, or like the people that have been supporting D&D from day one that are the reason it exists to get to 5e in the first place. They just saw money and chased it so hard that they're doing damage to the legacy of the brand. That one umbrella concept of stop draining the cash from it, or you'll kill it, is the biggest thing for me that sticks out.
So when you're specifically talking about the OGL shit, right?
That they're repeated trying to sneak in the use of AI in future writing and artwork, even though they keep getting caught and keep saying they're not going to do it again and then doing it again. Their seeming desire to cut out the workers that actually built the product that they're selling by farming out artistry and creativity for an algorithm that only benefits rich people and kills our planet. Like, it just seems like they've gone away from supporting a community and gone and shifted their mindset completely to how do we make the absolute money out of this we possibly could.
Do you specifically blame Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro for this?
I would put the blame at 70-30 with the lion's share of that going to Hasbro. I think that specifically American corporate culture, I say that as an American for people that don't remember me, that listen, is largely to blame for corporate culture, publicly traded business culture, ruining so many companies in this country, in this planet. Let me look at the strike that Vallejo Paint just had to go through in Spain to get worker benefits because that company was just bought by a private equity firm that's trying to drain it for capital. I think most of it falls on Hasbro, but definitely there is going to be management at WotC that is not blameless, because they're a product of the same ecosystem.
I do not disagree with anything that you've said. But I'm curious now, how do you feel about 5.5 coming along?
I'm going to be honest with you, as I silence my phone, because I'm an asshole and I forgot to do that before. Stressing over my laptop and didn't think to shut my phone audio off. I have no plans to play the new rule set. None. I'm sitting it out for the foreseeable future. I stopped paying attention to what rules changed well before they came out with anything concrete, when it was still early beta stuff, because I was so mad at the company that I just couldn't look past that to really examine what the new rule set even is.
Are you just swearing off Dungeons and Dragons as a whole then until something changes?
I mean, yes and no. I'm swearing off playing Dungeons and Dragons online because I don't find any way to do that makes me happy, that doesn't feed money back to them with licensing fees. There are ways to do it, but not ways that I would enjoy. And so I still own all the 5e books that I bought, and I can see myself running a 5e campaign in person with those books in the future at some point if I found the right people. But I have no plans to purchase anything Dungeons and Dragons, specifically Dungeons and Dragons related, until I feel that there's some shift in the way the company is being handled.
Hey, I support that concept. I run a Dungeons and Dragons podcast. It's hard for me to step away from it, right? But like,
oh, absolutely. I don't absolutely other people for disagreeing with me either.
No, I agree with you for the most part on all of it. I give Wizards of the Coast a little bit more grace because I feel like Hasbro is the evil overlord. But we've seen D&D go through like company politics and bullshit in the past over and over again, and like this is just the nature of the beast, I feel, at this point. But I will say this, I absolutely agree with protesting with your wallet. It's why I refuse to buy any Nestle products. Hard stop.
Yeah.
That's the best way to have a voice, because we're not people anymore, we're consumers, right? And so that's how we are able to flex our muscles a little bit. So
yeah, and I'm not the type of person to write Dungeons and Dragons off as a game system permanently. If I begin to see at some point that Wizards of the Coast is changing in ways that are more friendly to the community, to artists, to writers, I could see myself swinging back around.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening at present with what's going on in the community at the moment. But if that changes, I'd be more than happy to come back to it. I love Dungeons and Dragons as a game. I love the rule set that I played for as long as I did. The community around it makes me very happy. But yeah, I choose to vote with my wallet, and I would like them to get to a point where I will be willing to give them my money again.
I know you're still involved in painting models, but you've moved over to like military models.
I've gotten in touch with my my inner 12-year-old and gone back to do some scale modeling stuff, because I'm also a huge history nerd, and I like things that are mechanical. And my dad was in the Navy, and I spent a good chunk of my childhood climbing over ships and going to air shows and all that stuff. So like I've just leveraged some of the skills I learned through miniature painting into going back to building like scale models like when I was a kid, because a lot of the skills overlap, you know?
Yeah, and we get to see in the Patreon Discord, you will give some sort of like oh, look at this tank or this plane or something that I'm working on. And it's fascinating because it's not horses and oozes and goblins and shit, right? Like it's been really fun for me because I love history. I do not know American history, and I'm not at all in tune with the American military or even like mechanical militarization. So when you post this stuff, it always sends me down a little rabbit hole in Wikipedia afterwards. That's why I go real quiet on it. Right. So, but
and the thing for me too, also, and I'll refute one slight point of what you said is I'm intentionally trying at this particular point in this hobby for myself to avoid American military machines.
Oh, all right. Fair enough.
And
that's a good point. They've all been like Russian and stuff.
Yeah, I've been seeking out things that I think are historically interesting that are outside the context of like the American history narrative that I got spoon-fed as a kid. Like I have appreciation for that stuff, but I've been focusing more on stuff that's relevant to other parts of the world at that time in history, such as like the Soviet T-34, which was pivotal at certain points in history, and like other things that were important but aren't just bathed in Americanized, propagandized versions of history, just to also as an exercise myself to learn more about aspects of history that aren't as prominent as the stuff I get drowned in living in this country.
Every once in a while, there's a Reddit post that pops up. It's like, what's the obscure history fact that you wish everyone else knew? And I will go through all 10,000 comments on that because it's fascinating. But I've got a handful more questions. But before I do that, I want to ask: if you're not playing D&D, you're painting models, you're working on that. What else do you do to fill your free time now? Like, what? Because there are a lot of people that play and then a game ends and they go through withdrawal, right?
Yeah.
What have you done to stave off those withdrawal pangs?
Well, I found that when I have ADHD, I hyper focus on things. I shut my life out when I dedicate my time to something. And for years, that was Dungeons and Dragons. And I found that the part of my brain that was engaged in D&D was the same part of my brain that was engaged in my younger years by reading. And so I stopped reading a lot of books when I started playing D seriously. And so I've been reading more books. I've been playing more video games. I've been doing the scale modeling thing. Also, for a good 5 years of my life, I lived in a state where all of the people that I'm close to were physically far away. So I had a lot of free time because I wasn't going out and doing a lot because I didn't have a lot of people around. I'm out a lot more now. I'm out in public. I have, relationships with people around me that occupy a lot more of my time than when I was living in Pennsylvania, kind of isolated. So I'm going to breweries, going to concerts, doing social activities I didn't really have access to for a little while in my life that I now have again and can like do the stuff I wanted to do but couldn't,
This is damn dangerous for this podcast that you're saying this. You're essentially telling people to go outside and touch grass. It's great.
For a good 5 years, the one thing I wanted and didn't really have was a social life. And now that I have one, it cuts in on my hobby time, which is not a bad thing. It's just when I have time for hobby, I have to choose wisely in what I put that time into,
Yeah, and a lot of people can make D&D their social life as well.
Right.
But when
absolutely. It's easy to do.
When you're isolated and everything you're doing is online and you can only do it once every 3 weeks, it's not the same, right?
Right.
So,
No, it feels like it when you're like reminiscing about COVID lockdown times when you really nobody could go out and have a social life. It was a welcome substitute, closest you could have, I think, for people like us. And it probably saved some lives. I'm not even joking. It probably saved some lives of people otherwise would not have been able to get themselves out of a funk by losing their social contact that D&D was able to provide something for them in that time,
Yeah. So speaking of COVID, do you remember your first episode on It's a Mimic?
Not specifically.
I do.
Do you?
Oh, I very much do. It was episode 103. It was goblins, and it was during our mob mentality stuff, and we were just drowning in COVID at that point in isolation, and so we started farming out stat block coverage to everybody else except for Dan and I, who were the only people that were still in a bubble. So, and you stepped up for, I want to say, hobgoblins.
Okay. I remembered doing those. I just didn't remember the one that was the first one. I definitely remember those being a piece of sanity for me in lockdown time, having something to do, having a task in front of me when I was stuck at home to read, process outlines, take notes, record, send stuff, communicate with you guys, that I remember all of that. I just don't remember specifically what was the beginning of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was. I remember sitting down with Dan when the whole damn thing was done, when we knew that we were going to come out of isolation stuff, and we dragged in like, oh God, 10, 12 other voices. When we
Yeah.
used to just have like 3. And we sat down and said, who makes the cut and who doesn't? And you were an automatic yes. And then we stopped and looked real hard at some of the others. But
Pepperino.
damn it, Peps.
Love you, actually.
I had the opportunity. She came to our wedding, and it was fucking phenomenal to finally meet her. It was amazing. She gave me a little dragon egg mini, which I cherish and will probably never put in a game because it's in my little like cabinet of honor. So
it's in your dragon's hoard.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I just don't want it to end up banging around against the other things and having paint chip off or anything else in the drawers, right?
Yeah.
Nicest person ever, and she somehow
100%.
managed to coordinate with Megan and Casey, so they all ended up wearing green. And I think it was
great.
entirely by accident, and it was pretty funny. So they were representing the dragons, which is on brand for her.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite memory about your experience of doing the podcast?
I mean, nothing specific, but it's generally just getting to know everybody that's involved between the Discord and recording with different people, having people to bounce my stupid ideas for D&D shit off of that weren't my players. Just generally the wealth of fantastic people that are involved in this podcast and getting to know some of them has been overall my favorite part of the whole experience. Just like even Brad.
we don't say his name. Sometimes it summons him and I don't like it. Was there something that was particularly challenging or upsetting about working on It's a Mimic or podcasting in general?
I mean, yeah, towards the end of my time somewhat regularly guest hosting, my life was in turmoil and just trying to keep up with being a part of things, even if it was a very small part. I didn't have the mental bandwidth to do it, and I was trying to do it anyway, and acknowledging that at that time in my life, even though it once was something that brought me joy to like get on mic with you guys, it was now stressing me out. I'm someone that struggles with object permanence, and if I don't have it in front of me, it doesn't exist. So I would panic and remember at the last minute that, oh shit, I gotta prep for this and I don't have time. And it was piling anxiety onto anxiety in addition to my already present D&D burnout, and then having to acknowledge that was going on and step away, that my life was too stress-filled to be able to continue to engage with it and have fun was the worst part, because I wanted it to be fun. It couldn't be at that time for me, you know.
I hope that we were not putting additional stress on you, and that it was easy once you made that decision.
It was all self-induced. It's because I wanted it to be what it was before, and my life was just not letting it be that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, we talk all the time on the podcast about how not every table is right for every player, and sometimes you outgrow tables, and that's true of whatever adjacent projects that people do as well, right? So it's a great example of someone who has run into the fact that this doesn't make me happy anymore, or it's creating more stress than it's worth, and having to sever. And I said to you before we hit record, you sound so much happier. So I'm genuinely happy for you. You are I know that things were very stressful for a while, and I have cited you as a success story for recovery from shit a couple of times. So without getting into any specific details on the internet, but like it was a lot. I've been inspired by your ability to look at a hobby and say, hey, this is just not for me right now. So
yeah, that's not to say it'll always be that, but for right now, it's just, you know, it's just not something I can devote my energy to. You know?
Of course, yeah. Who is your favorite host to record with? And you can't say me because that's self-serving.
Oh, but derailing you has been the most fun part when we're trying to stay on track, and I just keep throwing like curveballs at you.
All right, hold on. I actually have an anecdote before you answer the question. Yeah. You would, when you were running your Curse to Straw campaign, you would consistently like message me on Sunday nights.
Speaking of derailing.
And you would always send me a message on Sunday nights when I was DMing. And every time I knew I couldn't answer because you and I would go down a rabbit hole for 45 minutes on bouncing ideas off of each other. And so it was always a thing for me on Monday morning. My Mondays were not productive because I was sitting there on Discord with Jeff going back and forth. So I want you to know that you effectively derailed aspects of my life through Discord. But no, who's your favorite host to record with?
I would just say more due to like the wealth of time, because I recorded with a bunch of people. It's probably Megan because she makes me laugh harder than I think anyone else on the podcast. Just something about Megan's humor always struck me funny, and there's a difference between listening to it and laughing in my car driving to and on mic, looking you guys in the face on Zoom and being able to have the same laughs but be a part of the joke is just so much fun.
Yeah, she's a freaking riot. And if she ever figures out how funny she is, we're all fucked.
Oh yeah.
I've been asking everybody what is the episode that they were part of that they're the proudest of. Do you have any instance or memory where you're like, hey, this was really fucking good?
Yeah, I actually went back and dug into my old notes to try to remember more details. This would be episode 148, Homebrew, that I did with you and Brian from the Bearded Nerd.
Yeah.
And it's less about specifically what we talked about or the experience on mic, even though that was great too. It was mostly just the core of this podcast is about unleashing your creativity. And there is no better way to capture that essence than with discussing homebrew content at length and ways to use your creativity specifically and not just centered around like a stat block or a module. Just being able to participate in a discussion around purely creative aspects of Dungeons & Dragons is something that I look back on very fondly.
It's funny. We did those episodes and it sparked something in the back of my brain. And the moment that we created the Patreon, which was, oh God, a year later, I knew I've got to go back to this homebrew idea. And so we've got, by the time this comes out, roughly 30 different homebrew episodes on the Patreon. Yeah. So where I talk about with the homebrewing the shit, mostly in my own campaigns and how I would use the deck of many things differently or the false hydra or shit like that. Yeah. So but moving forward, we're changing it so that all the other hosts get to weigh in on homebrew mechanics that they're excited about. Right. Because I realized that it's all well and good for me to pop off, but it still wasn't scratching the itch from that episode. I think it was a 2-parter that we did with Brian, if I remember correctly.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun. It was definitely something that I set aside as being like, I got to revisit this.
Ultimately, I think what got me engaged in this podcast as a listener early on before I ever got involved with interacting with you guys or guest hosting or whatever was the early episodes when it was just you, Dan, and Terry. The thing that struck me and captured me the most was the fact that not only is it about being creative, but it's 3 different people with 3 different dissenting opinions on how to cover the same topic and 3 different ways to be creative in the same space. And so like expanding on that when adding more hosts and COVID and talking about all this expansion of talk around homebrew, all of that, it all kind of ties together with just giving people more ability to flex their own ideas, to have contrasting opinions to bounce your own thoughts off of, whether they be people in your own life, people that you're listening to. There are plenty of places out there you can get advice from D&D where it's kind of, pardon the term, but it's kind of a circle jerk where it's the same handful of opinions that go round and round and round with people that agree with each other about everything. And this podcast has always been about disagreeing with your fellow DMs in creative ways.
Yeah. Yeah. We've always, as much as we're friends, a lot of time, like outside of the podcast and even outside of D&D, we do not agree with shit. And it's fun to go after each other. And there are some voices. Kyle is my favorite to argue with right now because he puts me under spotlight like nobody else does. And I really appreciate that shit. So I'm glad that we're there. I've got a couple of podcasts in mind right now where I'm like, yeah, you guys suck because all you do is pass the idea back and forth and pat each other on the back, right? And I'm not about that.
Yep.
So I'm glad to hear somebody else say it because it's a point of pride for me.
I get enough of people patting each other on the back with the American news media. I don't need it in my hobbies too.
So we're heading into a transition period for the next couple of months where we revamp our processes, refocus on content onto conversations that we want to have and that listeners are more interested in. We've got 6 years under our belt at this point, and I think I've got my finger on the pulse of what people are looking for. And this is a good jumping on point for a couple of people. And we've got some voices that are stepping up in a big way, but it's also a good jumping off point for people. And I'm sure that anyone who has listened to this segment of you and I talking knows that you are not moving forward with It's a Mimic. You have other priorities and you're refocusing your life in other really healthy, fun ways. Is there anything that you would like to say to the listeners before you log off for the final time as a guest host?
The first to say, nothing is forever. And that as much as I have taken a step away from D&D at this time in my life, and that includes this podcast, what I will say is this: if I to come out of retirement at some point down the road in future years, it will likely be for something that isn't Dungeons and Dragons. There are a lot of other great games out there to explore. As far as advice or thoughts going forward to listeners at large, to the community at large, I would say consider the world we live in when spending your hard-earned money on your hobbies. It's okay to love D&D, even with the direction Wizards of the Coast seeming to be hell-bent on taking. It's okay to engage in it with whatever method feels right to you. Just remember that this hobby lives and dies on small creators, indie writers, artists, game designers, podcasts. And what do you think more directly helps the working class people that make tabletop role-playing games great? Buying digital books from a major corporation, buying cut price books from the dragon that is Jeff Bezos, or maybe buying a few less books, but spending your dollars at a small game shop, which is putting food in that person's family's mouths. Buying an indie game that sounds cool, even if it isn't Dungeons and Dragons, and you might have to wrangle your friends into playing it a little more challenging, intro. If it's at all possible for you to do within your means, support small creators and retailers. Back that Mapmaker's Patreon page or that podcast. Buy minis from someone 3D printing them in their basement. Support your community, and it will support you in return.
This is very well said, and not because you said support podcasts. I agree with everything that you said, and I am eager to as we move forward and we focus on 5.5. I'm also eager to get into some of the other systems out there that people are not playing and hopefully promote them in positive ways. And one of the things that I've been doing with Sean on and off on the Patreon has been exploring other role-playing games and other systems by looking at their books and seeing what they do well and what we can get excited about. So there are lots of tabletop role-playing games out there. It doesn't have to be D&D. And a lot of these guys are they're doing broken heart projects where they think that they're doing the next big thing, and it just, like, the Kickstarter made it but then fizzled, and then or it's a product that was published and they just couldn't get enough money for the next edition back in 2008, so it's just collecting dust. People should go out and check this shit out. Do you have one in particular that you're like, hey, everyone should check this game out?
Yeah, I have one that comes to mind immediately because it's easy to find. It's really easy to pick up and play. It's a thin booklet, and I'm pretty sure you can download it as a PDF. It's called Cairn. It is old school revival sort of game. It is very light on rules. The whole booklet is maybe 20 pages, and it is super easy to pick up and run for a one-shot or for a short arc. It's the old school feel of everything can kill you, and maybe you should think about fighting as a last resort. But it's a ton of fun to engage with. I picked it up on a whim for a couple of dollars. I ran it a few times for friends just for like a palate cleanser and loved it. It's very simple. It's very cheap. And it is a ton of fun to pick up and play.
Sorry, you said it's called Cairn?
Yep, Cairn.
There is a website, cairnrpg.com, where people can go check that out. That's cool. I really thought you were going to say Morkborg, if I'm going to be honest. So
Morkborg is a ton of fun in a very similar way, but Cairn is a little more accessible while having a similar feel and vibe.
Yeah.
Like Morkborg suits a very certain type of player who really appreciates humor with really, really dark, gross imagery, which I do, but not everybody does. No. Cairn, you can kind of take in any direction you want. It's a very similar type of rule set that I feel like is more accessible to more people. And if you try Cairn and you have fun with it, and you can get into dark, gruesome, gross, grimy shit, play Morkborg. You'll love it.
So before we wrap up the segment, I move on to the next person. I just want to throw a couple of stats at you. Your first episode was episode 103, Goblins. Your last episode was episode 235, Feats. You did a handful of episodes in the Campaign Builder and one Legend Lore where you and I sat down and went over the starter set, and you absolutely over-prepped the shit out of it, which was hilarious for me. You did
Do.
29 episodes over 3 years, and you had over 48 hours of airtime.
Damn.
So that's just under 5% of this podcast. So you keep calling yourself a guest host, and we've used that term, but you were a full-blown host for a long time. And you were worked into the schedule, and you were part of our Discord and part of the family, and it was always a pleasure to have you on every single episode. And I hope you know, if you ever want to come back, there is a seat for you, and we will never put pressure on you to have to keep up with our schedule.
It was never you. It was always me. I know that's a thing, but it's the truth. My anxiety got the best of me at a rough time in my life, and I did not step away because this was an enjoyable place to be, just that I couldn't make it fun in my life at that time.
Well, what I'm saying is, if you think it might be fun again, come on back. You know how to get a hold of us, and there's always a spot. You're still part of the family, so
I'm still in the Discord sometimes when I have the brain cells to be.
Fair enough. That was amazing. Thank you, Jeff. I am so fucking happy that you agreed to sit down and do this one.
Of course.
That's all for this episode of It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get. If you'd like to reach out to us or find other places where you can listen to this podcast, please check the show notes below.
Testes, 1, 2.
Yeah, I did miss that. Yeah, thank you.